welcome to Femcasters, a podcast and community where feminine wiles and ferocious female voices collide.
Femcasters was born from the idea that we can change the world one broadcast at a time. We are here to unite and elevate the voices of silence breakers just like you, girl-wide.
Let's kick it, Corinna.
Kick it!
I mean, you own a women-owned business, and that, to me, for both of us, it inspires us, and we can't wait to pick your brain because I love the Wisdom app. And I mean, it is such a really unique perspective on how you harness social audio. And social audio has been new to me in the past year, and that you saw that there was this opportunity and niche, if you will. What was the process in terms of knowing that? Well, obviously you wanted to democratize mentorship for everybody, but how did you even think to bring it on social audio? Because you had to think fast, act fast.
So I think absolutely where the founding mission of Wisdom is, I do want to democratize access to mentorship. And I would say it came together. The idea of mentorship has something that has, I would say it's been a theme throughout my career, particularly in my early career, a lack of mentorship. So within my journey as a woman in tech, because I have worked in technology, throughout my career, I always felt that I felt that I was never able to fully access the mentoring that I needed, because I was specifically looking for female mentors. I wanted to speak to women in tech who were several years ahead of me, who had the experience, or to put it another way, the wisdom. I think it also would have been helpful if I had been able to reach out to women of color within my position who had maybe faced some of the situations that I faced that were very, specific to my sort of intersectionality and diversity. And even though I worked in very large, global companies, those mentors were just not available. And so I would say that's like one theme where mentoring has been center of mind for me. Also, I spent a period of time working on a program in the UK, Diversity and Startups program. In fact, I think to date, it is the UK's largest diversity and startups program. And one of the key questions that the team needed to answer within the program was, why is it that when we look at the profile of founders who are raising investment for their startups, there's an underrepresentation of certain groups, particularly women, people of color, and people who don't have degrees? Idea being that anyone should be able to start a startup and raise investment, whether you're a woman, whether or not you have a degree, it shouldn't necessarily be essential, but that wasn't being reflected in the numbers. One of the key findings that came out of the program was a lack of access to mentorship. So the hypothesis or the discovery was that a broad spectrum of people want to start businesses, inclusive of, women, people from different socioeconomic backgrounds. However, what we found was that there was a lack of access to mentorship. So to give you, if you like, a quick case study, if there's a founder who perhaps they want to build a solution for the restaurant industry, it's pretty essential that as an entrepreneur, while you're at the idea stage, one of the first things you need to do is to speak with experienced people within the restaurant industry and validate your hypothesis, right? Because as a founder, you've got an idea in your head of this is going to be the thing they need. But when you actually start interviewing the restaurant owner, they have a whole other perspective in terms of, this is a solution that I would be willing to pay for. This is the problem that's keeping me up at night. So in essence, to kind of summarize that, we found that one of the key barriers to accessing entrepreneurship was a lack of mentorship, because oftentimes the mentors you can access are dependent on your your environment. What kind of jobs do your parents do? What do your neighbors do? If I want to be a lawyer, but some people with their life situations, they don't have lawyers within their community or their family. And then we found people were resorting to LinkedIn. And we discovered pretty quickly LinkedIn is built for mentoring. So if you go on LinkedIn, and what we found was people on the program, and this is something I've experienced as well on the receiving end, people may, and you may find this too if you go on your LinkedIn, you may have a whole load of messages in your inbox, in your DMs, that you've just probably never answered. And some of them will be people who are saying, hey, I'm interested in doing what you do. I would love to ask you a few questions. But LinkedIn, I think, is designed for you to connect with people you already know. I think that's the essence of LinkedIn. It's not really designed for cold introductions. And so, in essence, part of what we're addressing, and I think one of the key trends with Wisdom, it's the unbundling of LinkedIn and saying within Wisdom, can we have an audio community of experts, coaches, mentors, but also just really helpful people who want to give back. So they've come to the platform with a great intention in terms of giving back. Now, of course, alongside the living, the giving back, from a creator perspective or a business owner perspective, there is a commerciality as well, right? So, because in essence, we can look at Wisdom as a two-sided marketplace. On one hand, there's the knowledge seeker, which I've spoken about. But then on the flip side, there's the expert or the mentor, or we could call them the content creator. And from their perspective, I think for them, it's a bit around building their personal brand, building their influence, leading with advice. But of course, as we know, oftentimes when you give great advice, that builds your funnel and that leads to sales. And even though Wisdom is early days, right? We just launched October 2021. It's just a few months. But, I'm pleased to see that we are already seeing testimonials from Wisdomers who are saying, I've closed new clients through Wisdom, I'm generating new business. And this is taking this approach of just leading with advice first.
Now, I love that we spoke about democratizing access just a little bit as we opened this conversation. I personally was invited to be one of your early mentors on Wisdom when you were still in, I guess, test mode or beta.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm an Android user. So that kind of kept me from being able to take the leap. And what I will say, though, is that I heard from many people in my community that were working as coaches or who had some wisdom to share that they wanted to give out to the world, especially during this time of COVID. There was one even, Ada Nepom, who is somebody who specifically supports people through difficult changes. Like that's one of her specialties. She says change is like it's inevitable. We all have to experience it. So she chose to take some of the programs that she typically would charge for and start to put them out on Wisdom, just to bring it out to a bunch of people who might be really thinking about what they needed to shift and change in their lives during this really incredible pandemic that has altered so much of what we've seen. But the question I wanted to ask you, because I'm also connected to other women who are doing a couple of things that are trying to serve the same need, but in different ways. One example is Own Trail, which is headed by Rebecca Bastian. She had come out of working in technology as well, but in kind of the real estate Zillow marketplace, right? And now has her own company helping women blaze their own trail and connect with one another and put up help beacons when they need it and things like that, seek out mentors or offer themselves as mentors too. So they're doing a more kind of what I would say traditional social media approach as opposed to the audio. What made you choose to attack this from the audio perspective as opposed to one of these more traditional social media platforms?
Yeah, that's perfect. So I would say, so from working on this OneTech diversity in tech and diversity in a startup founders funding program, we tried to, the program we set up a mentoring work stream. as a part of the program. So we identified a need for mentoring. So we set up a mentoring work stream. And the individuals who were running the mentoring work scheme found out within a few months that mentoring programs are labor intensive and they have a high rate of failure because it's the two-sided marketplace challenge, where on one side you're recruiting the mentors, on the other side you're recruiting the mentees. Then we had to match them. They had to schedule the first meeting. We had to follow up. Did the meeting happen? Then we had to follow up. Was it successful? Are you going to meet again? And then if it wasn't successful, it was back to the drawing board. Once social audio technology became accessible through the mobile, that was where I saw an opportunity to connect social audio to mentoring. I also believe with audio, it is quite authentic. I think it allows people to be vulnerable, because you can read the emotion in somebody's voice and also hearing them. I also am a fan of that. It removes the visual, so you can really focus in on what the other person is saying. I think also removing the visual, it removes some of the superficial. I think it removes some of the judgment. Sometimes it helps people set aside insecurities or just the overload, and lets people be themselves. And then also I think what was key, and where with social audio as well, where I thought why I felt it was the right medium, it's in Wisdom's the one-to-one format through social audio, which I know is something quite unique to the platform. Like, social audio, it's a massive space. It's evolving into, its own multi-billion-dollar category. But in particular, what is unique about Wisdom is that all the conversations are one-to-one. There can only ever be two people speaking at the same time, and everyone else is listening. And I think from a mentorship perspective, that was very, very key to me, because I think one-to-ones allow you to go deep and really get to know the person, as opposed to, one-to-manys. And then I think one other aspect of audio that I think really helped, that was key, was the fact that all the conversations on Wisdom are recorded by default. Mm-hmm. So it means that the conversation, or this mentoring session, or this knowledge exchange session, it lives on beyond the moment. It's recorded down, which in turn helps them also build their professional profile, because you have a home on Wisdom now with your best talks, like the best of your audio. But it also means that anyone else can tap into that wisdom at any time. And in particular, in the beta stage, some of the early, we've had amazing testimonials, but a couple of coaches identified, and they said, well, my mission is to help as many, because even though I can go live on Wisdom, right, and I can speak and help people, that talk is saved forever. So anyone can play back the talk afterwards and still benefit. And they said, I'm helping people while I sleep, which, I kind of really resonated with. And so, yeah, I think that was the idea around social audio. And I think possibly the last thing I would say is there's the drop-in element of social audio, which I think can remove, or sometimes with mentoring, it's the back and forth and the scheduling. Are you free? When are you free? Da, da, da. But I love that, with Wisdom, you can just open up the app at any time, and there's going to be either a library of pre-recorded conversations, but there's always going to be live talks and people you can just drop into and speak.
I love Wisdom, though. I love Wisdom that you can actually time your guests. So if you want to keep the clip going, this was genius. I'm sure it was your idea, Dayo, like the 5-minute, 10-minute, or you can have an hour-long guest. But that was, I think, one of the amazing things. And the other amazing thing as a podcaster is you can repurpose the content, because it's all recorded in MP3, download it, and voila, you have a podcast if you want, which is brilliant.
Oh, I'm glad you're finding the features to be of use, but I think absolutely. And that was a request from our early podcaster. We have a lot of podcasters on the Wisdom app. And I'm going to hold my hand up and say that wasn't something I thought about. It was feedback from the early beta group. And they said, oh, they said this could be a really easy way for me to create podcast content, because if I want to have a guest, they just have to download the app. And it was, so it was actually their feedback and a request. And we said, why not? It makes sense. You can repurpose your own content. After all, it is the creator's content as well. And you may have noticed we also now have a feature with high fidelity recording. So you can get just a really good quality in terms of the audio. And it's something that you can toggle the option on or off. But I think also just removing some of the barriers to content creation. And then in terms of removing barriers, I was going to say to Corinna on the Android, apologies for inviting you early and not being on Android, but we are working on it. And within the next few months, I would actually, I can definitely say the first half of this year, we should be live with our Android version.
I will admit, I broke down and went out and got myself an iPad so that I could also get on Clubhouse a little bit earlier. But I do have that. I just find that the audio quality on my iPad, which is 2 generations old, isn't as good as what you would get on the iPhone. So as a podcaster, I didn't feel like the quality I was getting out of it could be something I would publish. So we'll get there, and I can't wait. So I'm chomping at the bit for it myself.
Corinna, tell Dayo our love story and how we met, because tell her.
So this is just a little bit of a funny story. I was going to graduate school for my MBA, and after 20 years of working successfully in building brands, and some of the younger students in my class were like, "You have a podcast, you should be on Clubhouse." And I said, "Clubhouse? What's Clubhouse?" And they essentially helped me over a Zoom call with their iPhone and myself, do this whole test where we tried to access some of my potential listeners and talk about social impact and sustainability. So I got the Clubhouse bug. I went out and got the iPad because I couldn't justify replacing my $1,000, Samsung phone. And so I just went ahead and said, okay, great. I'll go ahead and do this, get the iPad, get on Clubhouse. Within a couple months of being on there, I met Julie Loken. And so she became kind of this amazing collaborator in the space. What I loved about her was that I really felt like she was always coming from a place of good and no judgment, and really wanting to put herself out there and support other people in the community in a really genuine way. And if it weren't for social audio, we would probably never have met. She's in Chicago, I'm in California, and now we're business partners. It's kind of amazing.
Wow, I think absolutely. And to your point, I think there is something about social audio being a leveler. I feel it brings people together in a way that I haven't seen with any other platforms. Like, you could have potentially been in the same Facebook group or on a Twitter thread, but social audio, you're speaking, right? And you're hearing each other, you're hearing the energy, the intention, and you're like, yeah, I connect with that person, I could work with that person. So I think it's great.
So social audio, the power of social audio is exponential. The growth is exponential. How were you able to take this idea and to make it into this thing? You made an idea a thing, which I know a lot of our listeners, they're entrepreneurs, they're podcasters, they're people with dreams. How did you do that? That's bold, number one, and it's brave, and it's also so ingenuitive in terms of taking it just from an idea to a real thing that you're changing people's lives, Dayo, literally.
Yeah, I think first of all, thank you for that. I would say, first of all, I like to create. I'm happiest when I'm creating, and I have a questioning mind. So pretty much, I would say 90% of the time, if I'm interfacing with something, my brain is thinking how I would like to improve it or how I would like it to be. So it's a leaning towards creating, and particularly on wisdom, I would say, because wisdom is it's not my first startup. So I think it also helped on the journey with wisdom that my previous startup, which I also still work on, is a dating app called Africlick. And that was actually my first startup. That was the startup that I left corporate to build. And Africlick is it's a dating app, but particularly focused on the global African community, so globally people of African descent. So very much like a cultural play, saying that, there's like over 1 billion people, and particularly on the continent of Africa, and building a particular cultural solution for that group. So I think, it helped, of course, that I had experience in app development and a track record in technology. And then also, I think that I genuinely enjoy creating, and I enjoy creating products, to your point, Jules, that people are actually going to use and interact with. That was something I always had a big desire to do, possibly because I started my career in enterprise technology. So primarily working on financial services projects. And so what I found there was I could be on a project at a big bank. Maybe I think of an idea. I would work on maybe a mortgage intermediary sales system. And I could work on a mortgage system for a year, but I would never meet the customer who was going to take the mortgage. I would never meet the broker who was going to sell the mortgage, because I was buried in a bank somewhere looking at documents and specifications of saying, this is what the mortgage buyer wants, this is what the broker wants. But I really wanted to speak to those people and connect the person to the technology that was being built. But that absolutely was just not a possibility as a consultant. That wasn't my role. And that wasn't my role in my place. And of course, being a bigger bank, the product is not that consumer led. So I think that was also partially a desire within me, where when I started to look at, okay, what do I want to do? Something that was key for me was I said, I want to work on something that, we can be building, and within a month, it's in the hands of a user or a customer, or in my case, a wisdomer. And then I actually want to be able to speak to the wisdomers and be like, hey, how is it? What can we change? And have that really tight feedback loop of always, improving a product.
Wow. Well, I have to say it's got me thinking about several different things, but one of them that I keep coming back to is that it's always hard, I think, as a woman in tech to get the attention of investors and make sure that they're on board with you too in the same way. The statistics here in the United States are that less than 2% of venture capital goes to female-led organizations. And then if you tried to look at female-led and also Black or African-American or whatnot, minority-led at the same time, that statistic gets dramatically lower. And so I wondered what your experience was like, and if you had any wisdom as a wisdomer to share with all of us.
Yeah, so I would say it was, I think, how could I put it? To your point, I think the numbers speak for themselves in terms of it being a challenge. And I'm going to agree with, I agree with the numbers. I think, of course, sometimes, particularly as a woman, as a Black woman as well, I mean, oftentimes it's hard to know when a goal is a challenge. Sometimes it's hard to know, is this a challenge because I need to get my proposition together more and make it stronger? Or is it a challenge because I'm being underestimated because of how I present? And that, for me, I think is one of those things you just never have an answer. So I would say part of the process, I think, which, was the challenge for me, was learning to differentiate between, does this particular aspect of the proposition need to be stronger? Or is it just that I'm seen as a high risk investment because I don't fit the archetype of what this individual, believes is going to be a successful founder and company builder. So I would say that is one big challenge, because oftentimes you don't just get to shortcut to, oh, it's because I'm a woman. You have to think, could it be better? Does the bar need to be higher? So I think it takes a lot of judgment. I think it's important also to have a really strong vision, and then you're connecting with investors that align with the vision. Like it helped for me. I made a lot of strong connections on Clubhouse, and that was in the moment, and it worked because they were also using Clubhouse. So they bought into the vision of social audio, understanding, right? A lot of us were there at the beginning. Clubhouse was there. Maybe we were hearing about a few other emerging platforms, but it was them also understanding that social audio is going to have many different dimensions. So which we then went to see, right? So companies like Spotify, Facebook, as we know, Twitter, LinkedIn, the big tech giants are going to have integrate audio in. But then there's also going to be standalone audio solutions, for example, like Wisdom. And then, so I think, it's around also painting a vision and then finding people who believe in that market. They need to, believe in the market that you're building for, believe that it's fast growing, believe that it's new. And then, incidentally, I would say something else that really helped the narrative. There's a journalist called Josh Constine, and I believe he has, whether it's a podcast or / Clubhouse room or thing. And in the early days of Clubhouse, he did an interview with Mark Zuckerberg, the founder of Facebook, and it was the founder of Spotify, and I can't recall, it was one other founder, another social founder as well. And they just spoke about the future of social networking, but particular social audio. And because a lot of people, I think you probably remember when Mark Zuckerberg came onto Clubhouse, like it was a big deal, kind of like in the tech world or whatnot. And so while Mark was on Clubhouse, he said that there's something interesting in audio. And then he said that there are going to be multiple different formats of audio. He said like one-to-many, many-to-one. And then he also said one-to-one. There's something interesting there. Now, I was already had the idea for Wisdom at the time, but that was a really useful quote to kind of be able to take back to investors and say, hey, Mark Zuckerberg thinks there's going to be something interesting in one-to-one social audio. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some color. But I do think absolutely the industry has some ways to go in terms of inclusion. And I think giving different profiles of founders a chance, because we're going to build different companies, and we're going to build different companies from different perspectives. And and I would say these things are becoming more and more important to consumers, as we know, as we look back to like Gen Z, like it's totally important to them. So yeah, with crowdfunding as well, I think something I've just garnered informationally is that crowdfunding can also be great as a way to top up your round. So as a startup, maybe when you have about 60%, 70% committed, you then go and crowdfund. That way, you're going to make your targets because you've already got the pre-commitment in the back end. And I think that's something that when people look at crowdfunding from the outside, it's not so apparent, but that's like one of the insider things that they do.
Very good. Well, thank you for the perspective. I also have ruled out crowdfunding in a few cases. I work in the natural products industry, and they don't support health products like that you would consume. If it's a health product that you wear, it's a great place to, I think, go and get some funds, especially if you have something truly innovative.
In the terms of you are leading the charge, not only for a younger generation, but for women and Black women who it seems like a dream. It seems like it is something that can never be attainable. And you're doing it, you're rocking it, you're amazing. And you're building this empire, if you will, on the foundation of not only your wisdom, but on the wisdom of others. And your advice to those people. that are wanting to do something as bold and brave as what you have done?
Okay, so my advice would be you don't have to do it alone. Maybe initially you might be alone because sometimes at the early stage you have this crazy idea and other people around you, they might not get it yet. And then in that stage, you just need to believe in your idea and you need to prove it and you need to build. Then I would say seek out mentors. You don't just need one mentor. Some people think that. It's good to have a variety of people that you can call on for different reasons. I would also advise ensure you do the work yourself, do the self-learning, maximize the resources that you have available to you initially, even if that is like a 1 hour immersion, like tutorial on YouTube or something like that. Do that first and get prepped so that when you do then go to seek out your mentors respond well oftentimes when they can see you've done the groundwork, right? And you've put forth effort. So rather than just, can I pick your brain about, you're saying, hey, I'm interested in A, I've already done X, Y, Z, and this is the part, you know? And then you're like, oh, this person has put forth effort themselves, therefore I'm interested to mentor them. And of course, coming back to wisdom, as I'm going to say, wisdom is a great place to find mentors because it's an audio community of mentors. So you understand that anybody you meet on wisdom is already there to connect with people and to have live conversations. And you know, to your point, one of my goals with wisdom, one of my early goals in wisdom, you know, I want to be able to say, we've mentored
Wow.
1 million people. We've helped, you know, 1 million people. We've helped people kind of level up their lives and make those transitions. Because, you know, I often find when I read back on people's origin stories, sometimes they have these catalyst moments or pivotal moments. And oftentimes I find those moments, they come from mentoring or for a point of realization and an insight of new information, and something clicks and they're like, right, I'm going to go and, you know, I'm going to pivot. I'm going to, you know, do it this way. So yeah, I would say mentoring.
I love that. And I just have to say really quickly that Corinna and I always talk about the power of one person that believes in you, that one person that sees that gem or sparkle or shine in you. It can change people's lives. And as a matter of fact, one of our friends, she's a femcaster. Her name is Marcella Gonzalez. She is on Wisdom all the time. And you came into her room and she called me right after. She's like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, Dayo was in my room. And she's like, she's so amazing. So I said, I am going to tell her how amazing. First of all, Marcella's amazing and a femcaster.
She
But
is.
but she is taking it by storm, using her voice. She started a podcast. She's finding this confidence and strength within her. And I'm sure part of it has to do with wisdom. So if you see her on Wisdom again, tell her I said hi.
I love that.
Because she'll freak out. But that was really a powerful story because she was more than thrilled.
Oh my gosh, amazing. No, I've spoken to her. She's awesome. And yeah, I mean, we have such amazing community, but she's a great member of the community.
One of the things I wanted to piggyback on is just the selection of your mentor and mentors. One of the things I've found to be really, really good advice from another entrepreneur was that they suggested that you think about your mentors almost like you would think about a board. So if you had somebody who really understood, for instance, finances, because it was filling a gap in your knowledge, and you wanted to have somebody that you could tap on the shoulder and say, hey, I'm building my business, but I'm like a little stuck, and here's why I'm stuck. This is my stage, and can I get some support from you? And think about that, and then have somebody that you really like for their marketing prowess that you connect with from time to time. And so you're kind of in your mind building kind of the board for what your trajectory is. And then at some point in the future, who knows, they could be people that actually do come on and work with you to grow and support, you know, a new company, a new venture, or something along those lines.
I think that's great advice. And I hope the listeners are taking notes. I think absolutely, as you said, if you think of it as your board of advisors and having coverage in different areas, I think that's great. And to your point around oftentimes they say, even if with fundraising, even if you want money, they say ask for advice first, and then that can then lead to money. So sometimes maybe another tip for people listening in, particularly if you are at the early stage, right? You're pre-revenue, haven't proved much. People are investing in you and the idea, and it can be a good thing to request a meeting. Hey, I'm building this. I see you're interested in this area. I would just love, a bit of your time to tell you about what I'm building. And then you'll find from that first conversation, the people who get really into it and they're like, oh, have you thought about this, 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 this? I think oftentimes another good fundraising tip is ask for advice. So if there's somebody who you think might be a great investor, especially if you are at the early stage of your venture and you're pre-revenue, maybe you're even pre-product, but you could ask for a meeting and let them know what you're building and say, I would love to get your feedback. And oftentimes what can happen is over a series of feedback conversations, this expert will get to see that you are coachable. They get to see how you operate. They get to see your markers in progress over time, right? Because something else is, they say investors invest in lines, not dots. They want to see a trend. And then it's that trend that creates the FOMO. Oh, if I don't get in now, I don't want to miss out. So I think just another good tip is leading with advice first, and that can oftentimes turn into investment. So lead with mentorship and advice.
Well, I love that. And what I will say is I can't wait until Wisdom is on Android, so it'll make my life a little easier. And I wondered if you, just before we wrap, I'm hoping that you can share a little bit about where your roadmap is. Like, where are you heading from here, from Apple to Android desktop?
Taking the world over, Dayo.
Totally. So, sure, great question. So in terms of Wisdom's roadmap, she said currently Apple, Android, absolutely within a few months. And then aside from that, if I look at the features, what we're developing, because that's another area. Our next set of features are very much focused around building interconnectedness within the Wisdom community. So features like private messaging, because our community wants to message each other offline, a search feature. So oftentimes people say, hey, I know I have a friend on Wisdom. I want to be able, we also have some features around engagement. So we've recently released live reactions, which I think is, I think we're one of the first in social audio to do that. So if you're listening in on a talk, maybe you don't want to pop up as a guest, you're listening, but you can send like a round of applause, or you can send a heart, like you can send just like an emoji. So you can participate in the talk without necessarily going live. And then it also means that the talker, the content creator, they're getting feedback. And then we also have, we're introducing likes to the platform as well. So you can, as a user, you can like a talk, but we're also showing all of your liked talks on your profile. So what it means, for example, is maybe if I go to Corinna and I see the talks Corinna has liked, well, maybe I'm going to like those talks because, I like Corinna. So, it's more than just sort of the likes for the creators to get the feedback. That can also feed our recommendations as well. And then, I won't go too long. I mean, we're also, and it sounds like a small improvement, but we're increasing the length of the talk titles. And I know myself as somebody who creates talks, it's like that niggle, sometimes you can never get enough characters when you're starting a talk. So we are increasing the character limit. And then I won't go sort of too much into it, but yeah, we're just releasing just really working on the user experience so that it can be that when you sign into Wisdom, and we know you're interested in these topics, because they create great content in the area you're interested in. So hopefully that gives you an idea in terms of what's coming up.
Yep, it certainly does. Julie, I think we need to try doing some of our one-on-one when we are just recording our own episodes. Let's do it. Let's do it on Wisdom and see how it goes.
Yeah. 1000%. I love it. Yeah. And I love to see people I learn so much when I listen in or jump in and have those really more intimate conversations.
I like those features. I like that.
It's amazing. I mean, we have someone who's like a genius right here with us, besides Corinna, but we have Dayo too. But I just want to say thank you so much. I feel like we could just talk to you, pick your brain. We'll definitely see you on Wisdom. And I hope that you'll surprise us one day and when we're speaking on there, because I know it's your passion. This is how you're actualizing your purpose, and you're doing it in such a magnificent way. You're using your voice to impact the world. Corinna, let's do it, girl.
Okay. So we're going to invite our audience to come kick it with us on your platform.
Let's kick it.
And we have 2 words we like to ask our guests to say, and that's simply kick it.
Kick it.
Okay, sure. Do we all say it together?
Because we're going to kick it on Wisdom.
We can try.
Dayo.
You want to do kick
Okay.
it?
We've never done that, but let's do it.
1, 2. Kick it.
Kick it.
Kick it.
We love you.
Yes.
We're obsessed with you. Thank you for listening to another episode of Femcasters. We hope you were inspired. We hope you were motivated. We hope you think a little bit differently about how your voice, your very own voice, can change the universe. So tap on those 5 stars, share the love, share this episode with another Femcaster that you think could use this message today.
And head over to femcasters.com for all the goods we covered today, including tools to elevate your voice. You can join our exclusive community and celebrate the Femcaster in you. Together, we can elevate the power and the voice of women girl-wide. Let's do this.